We have this idea that technology is neutral, or at least that the scriptures teach it as neutral. In the church, we look at technology as something that's kind of adjacent to humanity, not something that's intrinsic to humanity, which is a little odd. And I'm not trying to claim that I'm some sort of authority on the subject as of yet. I have completed two surveys and commentaries on the scriptures as it results to technology. And I can tell you right now, after going through the New Testament and the Pentateuch, the Bible shows a very different picture than how pastors generally portray a relationship with technology. I mean, we treat it as neutral. I was listening to a podcast with Ed Setzer and the CEO of Sermon Shots and Reach Right Ministries today. And he even said that. He said, the scriptures treat technology neutrally. Well, they don't. They treat it almost as if it's sinful, but it does take going to the scriptures first. Like, it takes going to the scriptures and then seeing what they say first, and then assessing whether or not the technology that you're using is a good thing or a bad thing, or an ambivalent thing, or something that can't be made good or bad, though there's very few cases of that. What I mean by this is that there's several instances in the scriptures where technology gets treated as if it's an intrinsically bad thing, and we're not really given any explanation for that. The first one comes like when we started making technology. We took from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, Adam and Eve, and the first thing they did is they made clothes. And, that solved the problem of nudity. That solved the problem of being covered and protected from the elements. That solved the problems that, clothing solves. It was a clear, expression of technological progress. And for some reason, God decided that no, that wasn't good enough, along with their expulsion from the garden because of their sin. And then, along with their expulsion from the garden, that animals had to die to cover them with clothing with their own skins, in something that most theologians understand was like kind of a proto-sacrifice, a first sacrifice for sin so that they could continue living on the earth. It's not explained that way. It's not said that's why God killed those animals, but it's also not explained why he had to replace their clothes, unless their technology was sinful, because it was made sinfully. We also see this in the scriptures when they talk about the altar that sacrifices would be made with the tabernacle during the kind of 40 years wanderings of the people of Egypt, or the people of Israel after they left Egypt. The altar had to be made of stones, and could not be made of stones that tools had touched. Couldn't be made with cut stones, because the tools would pollute the altar and they would pollute the stones, which is a very odd thing to say, because like the chisel is not, a sinful object, but yet for some reason cut stones in the context of worship were considered polluted. They were considered wrong. And we can trace that line all the way through scripture. In the New Testament, we see it most clearly where Jesus makes a whip to drive people out of the temple, because there would have been whips available. There would have been other things that he could have used, but he took the time to make a whip to do his work, as opposed to using a whip that was likely made by sinful people, because he himself was sinless. So since he was the direct person using that whip, we can see that he had to have made it so that it could also be sinless the way he was sinful. Technology seems to hang on to our sinfulness no matter what we do. This is why the swords aren't neutral. They're not like the guns we have that don't kill people. The swords don't kill people. People kill people. You could say that, right? Well, you could, except that scripture teaches us that, the swords will be beaten into plowshares. They don't get to remain swords that don't kill people because they're neutral. They're evil intrinsically. They're for killing people, which is why we have to beat them into plowshares so that they can be used to feed people. That's the thread that scriptures weave about technology. It's not treated neutrally in any way, shape, or form. But you've probably been taught from your pastor at your church that technology is not something to consider sinfully or not. You've been taught to treat it as something to use exactly like a tool. It always gets dumbed down to a tool because we want to use the technology. And that's one of the problems with this view.